Hello and welcome everyone to the 3PGC webinar series. The 3PGC, or Three Principles Global Community, is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles to people throughout the world. If you want to learn more about the Three Principles Global Community, you can find more information on the website at 3pgc.org. And today we are very fortunate to have Frenette with us. Carolyn Frenette with us. Carolyn is a certified advanced transformative coach, aka super coach, and transformational leadership consultant. She is the founder of the Insight Mastermind, the creator of the 12-week online program From Broke to Blissfully Booked, and the Principles of Creation, the key to unlocking your full potential 6-week program. Carolyn has spent the past 10 plus years researching the human intuitive process as it applies specifically to business building and entrepreneurship, immersing herself as a research participant in over 25 well-known business courses, and conducting experimentation with her own businesses, as well as those of her clients, and investing over $100,000 to date in her quest to help business owners develop a deep inner security, confidence, and strength that will transform the way they do business forever. Carolyn's research and professional interests have led her to explore various opportunities around the world. Her next venture and dream being to develop a nonprofit to teach women in developing countries how to wake up their inner CEO, I love that, and create a thriving business that supports their ideal lifestyle. Carolyn works with entrepreneurs, leaders, and visionaries who want to unleash their full creative potential and create better results in their lives and business. You can learn more about Carolyn at carolynfrenette.com, and all of that will be under the YouTube video when it's posted. So Carolyn, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to start the call that I really appreciate everything that you're doing for us, Bonnie, and appreciate you taking the time to do this. It's a lot of work. Well, as we've seen before we started recording, you're multitasking and you're busy making things happen in the back end of things. And I think sometimes we don't realize that it takes a lot of people to make a project work like 3PGC. So thank you. So yes, I am a super coach. And most of all, I am the mother of 3 schnoodles and 2 cats. That's the important stuff. And they are currently downstairs with my fiance, or else we would all be disturbed. And I live in Quebec. It's currently very cold, although I think it's not as cold as where Joanne is. It's not minus 100, but it's cold. And I wanted to fill in the blanks a little bit as to what I've been up to for the past 4 years, and then dive into today's topic, which is an exploration of the principles of creation. Of course, I'm talking about the 3 principles. And so in the past 4 years, I've been doing this coaching through my online business. But prior to that, I was an entrepreneur and I have been an entrepreneur for 15 years. And just had several businesses in Montreal, retail stores, yoga studio, manufacturing my own clothing line, and was a fashion designer before that. And each step of the way, always had to figure out how the heck do I launch a business. I don't have an MBA. I'm just born an entrepreneur and a creator. I just love to create things. I love beautiful things. And I guess one of my gifts is to see the need for something in the world and thinking that maybe I can respond to that need, and I create it. So that's how I created just a few of my past businesses. And I'm the kind of person who have been jumping head on to any venture and having to figure out how the heck to make it work. And it's only in the last 4 years of exploring the principles that I started to see why I have this capacity to create in that way. And then also, parallel to that, my ongoing long-term fascination with successful entrepreneurs or people who have the ability to create things in the world that will beautify the world, make the world a better place, and always having this question in the back of my head, knowing that creating a business goes way beyond what we see, the glitz and glamour and the, you know, the 6-figure or 7-figure, all the numbers that people are throwing around, and then the formulas and the step-by-steps and the do this and you will succeed. And I've always been fascinated to go beyond that and beyond that and beyond that, and to really see what is it that makes someone really able to create. And it could be anything. It's not just in business. It could be a beautiful, loving relationship. It could be anything. The creative process, I find, for me, is not necessarily about art, but I think in our everyday life, we just actively create many little things. We just don't think to look at it that way. So in my fascination to kind of unravel and dig deeper and see, like, what is it? What's the inside out creative process? And how can we explore that so that we can go beyond, again, the formulas and the step-by-steps and the information-based stuff that's out there, and go back or turn back, go within to see what is each of us capacity as human beings to see what's at play, to see the principles at play that create not only our entire human experience, but also that is at play when we create money or a business or a career or anything. So that's what I'm dedicating my time to, like this obsessed little bunny that is just really curious to see, well, why is it that this person has been able to create this thing or this art or this incredible business? Or again, I talk a lot about business, but if you're not interested in business or in entrepreneurship, I want you to think, how does this apply to me and what resonates with me, right? And I've actually dedicated my entire podcast. Bonnie mentioned that at the beginning. I created this podcast because I wanted to talk to people and I wanted to dive deeper into the principles of creation and what does that look like for them. By the way, our latest special series is with Barb Patterson, so you might want to check it out because together we get to jam and unravel that, again, that process. And when I say process, I don't want to make it sound like there's step 1, 2, 3, but there are like a few key things in there that we look at. So I wanted to talk about that with you today. And I wanted to start by, well, first of all, I like to keep things really practical because I like to put a context to our conversation. I'm not a principles teacher. I am a coach, and so I like to be in conversation. So by the way, at any time, if you want to raise your hand and talk about something that you're creating and something that you'd like to have clarity on, I totally welcome that. So making it practical, because I find that principles can be so practical and so useful in our everyday life. But if I look back about 4 years ago when I started to dive into the principles, and when I started to see the true impact of that, and it's funny because I already had a coaching business and I was already doing pretty well. I was making money, I had clients, but I was operating pretty much all of my life right up until that point. I was operating from a high level of ambition, a high level of stress, a high level of joy and excitement, all things mixed on the same energetic line, I want to say, right? loving to go fast, loving to launch things and just go, go, go. And but I was aware that there was another way to create that could be more effortless, more from my inner flow, with less stress, less anxiety. And that maybe that's when I started to see that maybe it wasn't all about me trying to make things happen, because I was putting a lot of stuff on my shoulders. It was all about me having to make it work. So fast forward to going back even more, if I look at how I was operating in my past businesses, just taking on so much on my shoulders, never leaving any space for the magic of mind. And by mind, I mean divine intelligence and universe, God. Because I thought I had to do it all. I thought it was on me. I thought nothing's going to happen if I don't do it. Got to get this done. You can only imagine what that looked like with my employees. Not so good at delegating, right? And when I started to explore the principles, one of the biggest things that hit me was that, oh yeah, I'm trying to control everything. And I think that I'm the ultimate creator in all of this. I think that it's all up to me, that it's all on me. And I remember sitting in London in one of the super coach training on stage being coached. Michael Neal was behind me and my coach was in front of me. And I don't even remember what we were talking about, but I remember having an insight, and I remember seeing for the first time in my life, back then I was 44, I think. I remember seeing on a really deep level through that insight that one of the biggest things I hadn't welcomed in my life was this collaboration with divine mind. Even though I called myself intuitive, even though I was learning all about intuition and I was very spiritual, but I was never really opening the door to welcome a deeper connection to divine mind and to create from that place. And what happened as a result is that I found myself again on stage having this insight in front of 70 people and feeling as if I was dropping into the arms of the unknown, and that the unknown was my best friend. Now that was game-changing for me because, as you know, if you've been exploring the principles for just a little while, you know that an insight can shift your entire consciousness, and it can shift everything without having to do any work. You know, that the insight does the magic for it. So here I am feeling for the first time in my life something that I had sensed, but now it was really opening myself to welcoming the magic of mind, that the unknown was my best friend. And that's when I started to look even more in this direction of, what does that look like when we're creating money, relationship, business, again, anything. And looking at this for myself and with my clients, how much space can we invite an inner spaciousness, a quiet of mind, a clarity of mind? How much can we invite ourselves to play in that space of infinite possibility and allow that to be one of the creative principles through us? So that became, it shifted everything for me. It took my business in a completely new direction. And what it did is that I mentioned earlier that I had already had my coaching business for a while, and I was pretty good at it, doing good. But what that insight did, and that opening to the possibility that it's not all on me, that I can actually sit back and relax a lot more than I had thought. It shifted the ground that I was walking on. I tried to explain that to Barb the other day, and I said it in French, and she was like, yeah, like an earthquake when the, I'm going to say it in French, the plaques tectoniques, the plates of the earth shift and move. So you're like, whoa, but then boom, they kind of ground themselves again. And once that happened to me through that insight, I felt for the first time again in my life as a creator and entrepreneur that I was walking on solid ground because I could see more, not only how my thinking was creating my own reality and how my consciousness would shift through insights, but also how the principle of mine, the one I had left out all of this time, how by seeing it and feeling it and having the shift, how now everything was coming together for me. So I wanted to just share that story for you to kind of introduce that idea of the principles of creation and how we can, in our everyday life, see these principles at play through the creative process. And does that make sense so far? Just, yeah. It's interesting because yesterday I was interviewing someone for my podcast, and I broke my own rule because I said that my intention for the podcast is to really bring the inside out understanding of the principles to the world of business and entrepreneurship and creation, and that all my guests would be like principles based. But I broke my own rule because I met this girl from New York who is an entrepreneur and a designer. And I heard her on another podcast share her story of how she shifted her business drastically. And I was so amazed by her story of someone who's feeling really stuck in her life and in her business, yet doing well, making some money, but not happy. And seeing that that was not going to work, the need to change her business and how she was doing things, and then seeing new opportunities all around her. So she shifted her business drastically. And that podcast should be coming out next week. So if you want to go check it out, it should be episode 34. But as I was listening to her story, I thought, I want to talk to her on the podcast so we can talk about the principles of creation. Because even though she's not in the principles at all, I thought, I'm just going to pull the thread out of her head. And I'm going to explain my fascination again, what I've been sharing since the beginning of this webinar, how I see the inside out creative process. And I'm not going to get that out of her because she might not be able to explain it in those words, but through her story, I want to illustrate that capacity that we all have as human beings to create, to be in the flow, to listen to our intuition. And it was so fascinating to me because it was an opportunity for me to open up even more my mind in terms of seeing, like everyone has this capacity. Everyone, even though they wouldn't say it in the words that we use in the principles, everyone has this capacity to have an insight about something and have a fresh new thought. And suddenly through that, to see a fresh new possibility. Like 5 minutes before the insight, you just don't see it. Something is impossible. You just can't work it out. You can't find a solution. Like the state of mind is all like noisy. And then somehow you let it go, you move on, or you hear something, or you just have a fresh new thought. And then you're like, oh. And then you see exactly what you were looking for, the opportunity, the people, the money, anything. So that again, talking to her, her name is Jennifer, to me was just again reinforcing and reaffirming that we all have this capacity. And what has become fun for me, and I'm guessing since you're on this webinar because you're interested in the principles, you're also curious to see how these principles are at play in your life, in your everyday life, and how knowing about this can enrich your life and open all of you, all of us up to even more possibilities. So I'm just going to take a pause here and check with you and see if anybody would like to jump in and talk about this with me so I don't ramble on. And if anyone is actually currently working on something or transitioning in their life, or yeah, just raise your hand if you want to talk to me. And if not, I'm going to call on you. And I actually, there's two people that I can't see because they're not on the video, but I'm just curious to see from people on the call who is currently like coaching or teaching the principles. Can you raise your hand? Greg and Doherty, okay. And well, I'd love to know what Joanne and Judy is up to. What are you guys doing? Can you unmute Joanne so that I can hear what she's up to in her life? Hi, Joanne.
Hi.
Yeah, see, I said I was going to be on someone. Go ahead.
Teetering on the edge of launching some kind of creative, I don't know if I'd call it a business, but venture for, I don't know, 25 years. So when I discovered the principles, I was actually on a trip. I was in BC, and it's very beautiful there. And I came and I read through Amy Johnson's book, and then I came home, and my art that I was doing at the time was entirely different. I'd never experienced doing my art from the place it was coming from. I can't even describe where it was coming from, but it felt really good. And so I think now I'm about to jump off the cliff, but I haven't gotten there yet, but I think I'm closer than I've ever been, if that means anything. But you probably know a lot of people who are creative who just sort of say, yeah, I'm going to do something with this someday. And then they're 80 and and it never happened. But so yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm really on the edge of something. I don't know where it's going to go.
And can I ask you, like, what it is that you would like to launch exactly?
I would like to launch right now I'm into painting, and I'd like to launch some kind of a venture where I encourage other people to just enjoy or go for a learning process that comes from within as opposed to from without. I'm not formally trained. I'm a dabbler. Over the years, I've tried different, mediums, and it's mostly been painting or sketching, but I've also done photography, and, there's lots of ways that I like to represent the world that I see, that in beautiful ways, or in realistic ways, or in stark ways, or in whatever. And poetry is another venue that I've pursued. And so it's pretty eclectic. And so that's why I'm saying I would like to come from a perspective of, there's something inside of you and it's something that the world can draw hope from, or direction for themselves, like from within themselves from. And so, yeah, it's really big. So I'm about to launch it. Yeah. So I'm about to launch it on Instagram. I'm just, gathering photos of my art and my process.
Thank you for sharing. That's amazing. And can I ask you, well, I'm going to ask you something, but you've already touched upon it at the beginning of when you said that you want to kind of share with people a new way or teach people a new way to create from this space that you have touched on that was bigger than yourself, and it seemed to be not coming from you. And well, can I ask you something? Do you think it's possible to launch your program from that same place?
Well, that's what I'm hoping to do. So, but I'm not sure how that will look or be, like, because it's such an unknown, right? Like, it's like you said, you touched this place of unknowing, and at the same time you like, I can't see anything clearly. It's just a space of unknowing. So I don't know how to move forward from a place of unknowing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd like to just bring a distinction because I can see that maybe my words alluded to something when I said the unknown. When I invited you to consider the possibility of creating your business from that place, to me, I would change the word then. Instead of saying unknown, I would say from a place of infinite possibilities, from something that's deeper than what your logical mind wants you to say. Because your logical mind earlier said it's really big, you know, and we say these things. And when we say these things, suddenly we feel it because we feel our thinking. And then suddenly something that could be created completely from the flow, which, by the way, Joanne, I'm so glad that you decided to courageously talk to me, because even though I put you on the spot, now you're enabling us to dive deeper into this and enabling us to have a fresh perspective on this. And so thank you. And again, to me, it's that invitation of, because we're always going to do that. We're always going to get caught up into our minds. And if we create from the limited thinking of the mind, things are going to look a certain way. And then we're going to try to make an action from a limited state of mind, or confused, or it's so big, and whatever, how that feels. And then in there, from that state of mind, it becomes a little more challenging. I think it's a different place to tap into to create. That's what I want to say about the principles of creation. And at the same time, I want to say that because we are thought, mind, and consciousness, we're all going to get caught up into our thinking. I get up in my head all the time. I'm right now launching a new program called Launch and Prosper. So talk about launching right on topic. And this is where I get to be in the game for myself and seeing the principles at play. And so just to give you an example that might illuminate something for you, woke up this morning, and actually last week I sent out an invitation to my list to be in conversation with me for anybody who's about to launch something that would like to be in the beta version of my program. So first email, I got fully booked for these conversations. And I'm like, yay, that's great. Victory, it's going so well. It's such a good idea. And it looked like, wow, it might be a really good program. I might sell it out in 1 week, and I just got ahead of myself in my thinking.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, my wisdom is like, slow down.
Yeah.
So yesterday I sent out another email. I spent half a day crafting that email. And then it's a gorgeous email. I worked with my editor on it. She checked everything. What did I do? Big, huge typo in my subject line.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And then I was like, oh, yeah, no, I'm not beating myself up about this. How quickly can I let this go? And then this morning, I was like, how come nobody's booking these conversations? And then I got into my head about it, that it was suddenly, maybe it's not going to work. Maybe it's a bad idea. Maybe your program's going to flop. But because just like all of you, I'm in the game of looking at the principles at play in everyday life, no exception. I got out of bed with my 3 barky schnoodles and I was like, oh yeah, no, doesn't feel like grounding, doesn't feel like wisdom, doesn't feel like truth.
Mm.
So that's another thing that I want to bring to this conversation of creating from the inside out, is that can we all become better? And not like, I don't want this to be like an exercise, right? But can we all be more aware of the thoughts that we're choosing to believe? That the thoughts that we're choosing to hang on to and to make into something, and to be more able to decipher, oh no, unhelpful thought, unhelpful thought, unhelpful thought. And then to invite ourselves again and again and again back into that place of grounding and wisdom and the spaciousness, infinite potentiality, infinite possibilities as to how it can be brought into the world of form. But one thing's for sure is that when we're launching anything or creating anything, is that, and again, that's what I've seen for myself, and that's my invitation for anybody listening to see for themselves, that the real energy we want to bring in the game, the real energy we want to tune into, is that magic of mind. And the less thought-created friction we bring on top of it, the more that can come through us as clear as possible, and we'll know from the feeling of it. And by feeling, I don't mean emotion. I mean the clarity of it, the neutrality, the inner knowing, following that inner knowing, and then our job is to take inspired action. Inspired action, inspired action. And my guess is that for many people listening who might be in a similar situation or have thought that before, like you said, Joanne, like I've wanted to launch this for 25 years. I'm on the edge, right?
Yeah.
The only thing that's going to keep us from launching way quicker, let's launch quicker, people, is the thinking, our thinking, getting into our head about it. Like there is, I was actually thinking about that yesterday, I think with a client, where it just really, I saw this even clearly, that there is nothing that will extinguish a luminous idea faster than crappy thinking. Because the luminous idea is a luminous idea. It's filled with potentiality. It's filled with the magic of life. Have you guys seen that for yourself? Like you've had this idea that lit you up, and you're like, oh yeah, that's just like there's energy to it, and you're feeling inspired, right? And then through different state of minds, it looks like a really bad idea. Is it really bad? I can't do that. Yeah, no, it's just, but that's just the fluctuating thoughts that suddenly that idea looks different when initially it was a luminous idea. So there's nothing that's going to destroy a potential great project, great piece of art, than just crappy thinking. So just food for thought, I guess. I'd love to hear from you, Joanne, and hear about your launch. And I was going to say put it on the Facebook group, but I don't think we have a group for us. But anyway, I'd love to see your art. Does that make sense, Joanne, before I move on? Is that helpful?
Oh, now I'm unmuted. Okay.
Any takeaway,
yes,
anything? Go ahead.
Yes, it absolutely makes sense. Yeah, it does. And I'd love to let you know what's going on. That was very helpful.
And is there one thing in particular that now you see fresh that could help you in launching?
I think exactly what you started with was the language around the unknown versus unlimited potential was like a real, like, oh yeah, that that sounds more true than just saying, oh, it's this big unknown thing. I don't know what to do with this because I don't know what it is, as opposed to saying, oh, no, it's not that it's unknown in that sense, not in a cognitive sense. It's unknown in a potential sense. And so that was really helpful. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Beautiful distinction. Thank you.
Oh, it was yours.
It's your insight. So we only have 10 minutes left today, so because we're going to wrap up at 12:45 Eastern time. So is there anybody else that want to jump in? Raise your hand before I call on you.
If no one else has any question, I have a question for you.
Oh, okay.
So I notice in my own process of creating, and when I say that, most of the creations I'm talking about are more technically oriented, like when I embark on a new project. But I've been noticing this particular way that it happens for me since I was in college. So many years ago, way before I ever learned about the three principles. But the way it starts with me is I fret, I worry, I start, I stop, I start, I stop. I wake up in the middle of the night, it goes on. And then I kind of give up. And then it just happens. And it all comes out. I mean, I can think of huge things like doing my master's thesis. I banged my head against the wall for at least a month or two, and I just couldn't get anywhere. And then I just said, okay, I'm going to graduate a semester late. I can't. And then one weekend, it just came out, and it's just, and I just went through it again with another project I'm working on. It's like I fretted, I started, I stopped it, and now it's starting to flow. And I guess my question is, like, I would love to leave that beginning part out and just flow, but it feels like that's almost part of the process. And yet that's got to be my personal thinking. So anyway, I'm just curious to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's great. Well, what do you think?
Well, I do think it's part of the process, because it's like, but I'm probably wrong. But the reason I say that is because it almost feels like, your intellect is playing a part of whatever you're creating. I mean, there's the flow coming in, but then I need that knowledge that that I'm working with to kind of coordinate itself, if you will, to come out right. I don't know how else to say that. So it almost feels like it's part of the process, but it's such an exhausting process, that part of it. And so I'd like to think that could just be let go, and maybe mine could organize the intellectual piece of it that comes out. But I don't know. I'm just curious to hear, because as I look back through my life, that's how almost every huge project that I've worked on, or small ones, has gone. It's almost like I felt like I had to cut off my ear before I could paint, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I actually hear that. A lot. One version of this that I heard recently was someone who said, "Don't tell me to let go of my drama. When I'm in my drama is when I'm like pushed up against the wall is when I actually get the courage to do anything." And so that was her version of that needs to happen in order for the creative process to emerge. And I think, like, you have a sense that you actually don't need that. Like, you have a sense of that. And you also said that for most of your life, it's how it has worked. Therefore, maybe that's your process. So I would start by questioning that thought, because those thoughts are so interesting. When we start to listen to, the thoughts that we have that just know it all, they're like, oh no, that's how it works. Mm-hmm. Like, to me, those thoughts, I'm like, oh, you're tricky. you try to make me believe. But it's not true. right? So starting to look at these things that actually look true, they're disguised as a truth, but they're not. Even when they become a pattern after a long time, because I know that I've had a phase, and I have different phases that I see different thoughts and beliefs, and I go like this because it's almost as if they pop up in front of me and I see them and I see their nature of it. I see how they're disguised as a truth, but they're not. Honestly, I would even say like 99% of our thinking is just not that helpful thinking. And can I ask you, when you do move out of that phase and then something comes over you or something emerges, can you describe that for me?
Yeah, I mean, like sometimes it literally wakes me up at night. Like I had a dream once. I was working on something. I had a dream, and I knew exactly how to move forward, and there was no more, no more of the drama, and in it. It usually starts when I give up. Like I'm just so frustrated by trying to start that I give up and say, I might have to not do this, or, I just can't do it, or whatever it is. And then it's like that that flowing into relaxation, and then mind comes. But yeah, I'd love to get rid of that part.
Yeah, so I think what I would do to bring it into exactly our conversation, because this is perfect. I love that you shared that with us. It's just such a great example. So, the theme of this webinar was the principles of creation and seeing the principles at play in our everyday life and in our creative process. So when I'm listening to what you're saying, I'm hearing you talked about fretting and worrying and push and go, stop, go, stop, go, stop. And if I just looked at that, I would say that's just a lot of noisy thinking that look real. And it's very uncomfortable. So yeah, absolutely, that's exhausting because we feel our thinking. So that's totally exhausting. And then somehow in the letting go, it could be from, again, you're exhausted and you're like, oh, F it. I don't know if I can swear on the 3PGC webinar.
I can believe you have.
Okay. But then we say that, right? And then in there, what really happens, I think, is just letting go of all that thinking. And then there's an opening. And we're not into the noisy state of mind. There's an opening. And then what has already been there, it's always there, that wisdom, that flow, that creative flow, the creative force, divine mind. Now there's actually space for it to come forth. And because there's like a purity to that, it just takes you with it. It has its own current, its own momentum, and then you go and you create something big and huge. So if I put it in that way, can you see? I want to say that there's, even if that was your way of creating, I want to say that there's a perfection in that. That's how you get to play. That's how you get to see the principles at play more if you want. You might have a next insight about that will free you from that part. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the key for me, I think, which is something I want to really highlight, is the fact that we can always count on divine intelligence to be there. And to me, it's a question of, what am I listening to? What am I pointing to? How am I showing up? How am I operating? What's the energy that I'm operating from? Being more mindful of that. Because for me personally, I've come to the place where now I just refuse to create from a place of overwhelm. That was my thing. Overwhelm, stress, anxiety. So now when I see it coming up, it's untrustworthy and I refuse it. And then I give myself permission to come back off, take a break, go for a walk with the puppies. And so whichever way that you get to see it, because you brought it up, and the point that you did is that you're actually seeing it for yourself. You're like, I think that there's something there. And that points you in a direction of having an insight about it. And same for everyone on the call today. And that's why I love the conversation of the principles, because as opposed to talking about, no, you need to do this, you need to go meditate and you need to stop doing that, like that's not what we're doing. And it's just showing how it works, these principles at play, seeing it for ourselves, having an insight. Yeah, and being in that game.
Yeah, I love that.
Is that helpful?
Very, yeah. And it really is that experience that has that I when I learned about the three principles, I immediately recognized the three principles in my experience of this up and down, but I haven't quit that habit yet. I haven't had that insight that's going to let that initial fretting part go and just be in the flow of it.
Yeah. And the last thing I'm going to say about that is that the fun thing about the understanding of the principles, I find, is that we actually don't have to look at that to have an insight, that something else is going to come up from somewhere else and it'll bring the insight into that. And I thought, again, that's why the principles are so practical. Saves us a lot of time.
Boy, yeah, I could get more sleep if I didn't have to worry so much.
Exactly. There you go. Well, I want to be mindful of the time because Bonnie has to go.
Yeah.
I want to thank everyone for showing up, and I hope this was helpful. Feel free to get in touch on my website, CarolineFrennette.com. Go check out the podcast. Got some fun episodes with Barb. We're talking about that. And that's it. Big hugs.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Carolyn. This was fabulous. And I'm sorry we have to cut it a little bit short today. So we'll have to bring you back on. And thank you, everyone who attended live and who's listening on YouTube. There will be information on how to get in touch with Carolyn underneath the YouTube video. So please check there. And I just want to let everybody know that the next webinar is on February 23rd, and it's with Dr. Mark Howard. So that should be a really great one as well. So thank you all so much.
Bye, guys.